language translation option available between English and French. So participants can find the interpretation button in the bottom bar marked with a globe icon to change the language option. My name is Saad Farooq. I will be moderating this panel. I work as a senior advocacy manager for the GSM Association, which represents the interests of mobile operators worldwide, uniting more than 750 operators with almost 400 companies in the broader mobile money ecosystem. I am responsible for the GSMA's work on international remittances, the GSMA mobile money certification, and also our financial crime prevention work. Ladies and gentlemen, the World Bank has predicted the deepest decline in international remittances in recent history, a massive 14% drop in the value of remittances to low and middle income countries by 2021. Despite this, remittances are expected to become an even more important source of external financing for LMIC's low and middle income countries, as foreign direct investment was expected to drop by nearly 32% in 2020. Moreover, the financial implications of COVID-19 pandemic, which include loss of incomes for recipients, further enhance the importance of remittances for the 800 million migrant family members who otherwise may find it difficult to make ends meet. In these challenging times, and with limited access to traditional remittance agents in many countries, mobile money is playing a crucial role in ensuring affordable access to remittances for the last mile. So in this session, we will discuss some of the strengths, opportunities, and challenges for mobile money in digitizing remittances to the last mile. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to the audience and my panelists. I have with me today Anne-Catherine Tchokonté, who is the head of mobile financial services at Orange Group, and she looks after the mobile financial services diversification for Middle East and Africa region. I also have with me today Florent Antoni, a global remittance expert. Florent works for Vodafone Group as the principal remittance manager and also heads the remittance services at M-Pesa in Africa. Last but not the least, I have with me today Richard Muriithi, who has significant experience of remittances in the fintech space. Richard works for MTN Group as head of remittances. So a very talented and expert group of panelists. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to open the discussion with a broader question on digitalization. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many non-bank remittance service providers in both sending and receiving countries were deemed non-essential and therefore had to close their physical locations. This opened the market to a greater use of digital financial services, particularly for mobile money, for sending and receiving remittances. In 2020, the industry processed more than $1 billion in remittances every month, which was a 65% increase from 2019, partly because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The average value per transaction of remittance received also increased from $106 in September 29 to $124 in June 2020. I'd like the views of all panelists here, so perhaps we could start with Florent. Florent, has M-Pesa seen a push to digitization for remittances as a result of the pandemic, and what has been your experience in this regard?
We can't hear you, Florent. You're on mute.
Florent, yeah. Can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now, Saad?
Yes, can hear you now.
Yes,
Apologies.
we can hear you. Go ahead.
For some reason, the mute button was not working. So to your questions, absolutely. COVID was like a perfect storm. Okay, they always have been saying that mobile wallet has been cannibalizing the actual remittance channels. I think what has really happened is we have grabbed the informal channel. So the informal channels completely disappeared since March 2020. There was no money being transferred through travelers and family and friends. So anyone sending money back home to family, they have to revert to digital wallets. And I just want to pause a little bit on the digitalization, because we have seen the digitalization in mobile wallets since 2016. We have seen a double-digit growth in the last 4 years. I think for M-Pesa, we have seen around 30% growth year to year, but here has been an inflection point. Actually, we cannot report the actual numbers, but for this financial year ending in March 2021, we are close to 60% growth. So yes, answering to your point, we have accelerated the growth, started in 2015, and I think we have seen a healthy growth, mainly because the informal channel completely disappeared. I think they are coming back, but again, due to the much better user experience and the user journey, we are seeing stickiness. More customers that used to be informal, they are sticking and using the digital channel. So I'll pause it here and maybe hand it over to the next panelist.
Richard, does MTN have similar experiences?
Definitely, yeah. No, we operate in similar markets, so we saw the same experience, and this also pushed us to do more. So not only did we now start thinking what can they do with their money in their wallets, because once they got the remittances and they could not cash out, so we've tried to also grow the ecosystem based on the whole digitization. So it had a ripple effect, not just for the remittances growth, but also growth for other services that we offer across down the bridge as we move along. So yes, I'll agree with Florent that there's been significant growth in the upwards to the region of 20% growth in the recipients that we get. But yes, the digitization has happened a lot, and we can still see stickiness. We have not really lost those customers, even when the markets have opened up past lockdown. They're still using the service. And now we are just also constantly trying to improve it to make the user experience a lot more superior. I think I'll touch on that as well as we move along, of efforts that MTN has done to ensure that our customers get that superior feel of the remittances that they get.
Great, that sounds really interesting. And Catherine, has Orange experienced any different challenges or new opportunities to connect with the last mile during this pandemic?
Sure. Thank you, Saad. Thank you to the co-panelists. We share the same vision, and the pandemic sadly has kind of been an opportunity to increase the mobile money enabled remittances. So we definitely saw growth into the activity, and we actually believe this is going to be like a long-lasting change. There's a structural change in the way people consider the option to send money back home. And at Orange, we also supported actually this move in the way people send money home by few measures, including waiving fees for some period of time, for example, for our customer in France sending money in Africa.
Thank you, Anne-Catherine. I think this is all very interesting. And I think one of the important factors behind the increase in uptake of mobile money remittances is also the price. The GSMA recently conducted a survey to assess the mobile money remittance prices. The results indicate that the price for sending $200 via mobile money is 3.5%, close to the UN's SDG 10C target, and around 47% lesser than the global average of $200. This price, I'd like to clarify, is where you send using mobile money. So this creates a significant comparative edge for mobile money providers and ensures that more money lands in the hands of migrant families during challenging time like the pandemic. And Catherine, what are some of the key driving factors that are enabling Orange to offer remittance services for less compared to banks and MTOs?
I will say the first one we talked about it is digitization. It has been helping to reduce cost of sending money internationally, while enhancing the customer experience and the transaction efficiency. In my opinion, another driving factor would be the increased competition, versus the historic players. like banks and mobile transfer operators. For example, in Western Africa Economic Zone, where Orange operates few countries, it was quite natural for us actually to extend the peer-to-peer service that was already offered to our customers domestically up to cross borders, and I'm talking about south to south remittances. So this was a clear alternative to existing banks offer and money transfer operators offers. And what else can I say? Yeah, mobile money has kind of kept its promise to reduce costs. It's an affordable channel that extends the reach, the security, the convenience, and the instantaneity of international remittance. So as a matter of fact, just like by our intrinsic activity has driven costs down.
Great, great. Richard, you mentioned that MTN is trying to create more use cases for mobile money users to retain that money in the wallet and then use it for digital transactions. I think that is actually a very, very useful approach to ensure that more and more money stays within the digital ecosystem. And it also helps to reduce the applicable cash out transaction charge. Do you see that this approach is working in practice in your markets, or are customers still preferring cash outs and spending the money received outside of the digital ecosystem?
Customers will always spend cash. So our biggest competitor between the three of us, all panelists, is cash. We're competing with cash and letting it not be used within our ecosystem. So yes, I've seen that. But maybe I can add something we did from MTN. We actively engaged the aggregators and the MTOs in terms of termination pricing to ourselves. And we collaborated with them in terms of, if you reduce your price on your end from the sender, because primarily we are receiving countries, we also committed to reducing our price in terms of what we charge them for termination, or even the revenue share agreements that we have. Those are the models that we normally use in terms of the pricing we did. We did that. We further went and even zero-rated the local P2P charges from a local perspective. So we took very solid steps in terms of addressing pricing by itself. And then the rest is in terms of the ecosystem, like similar to my friend Florent with his Lipa and M-Pesa product. We have also MomoPay for the merchant payments, where we also tried to be very competitive and ensure that there is proper usability in terms of such services. So that's what from MTN we did solid steps with regard to the pricing and the increasing of the ecosystem and use cases that are used for the money.
Right. Perhaps I'll move to Florent. Florent, one of the ways, as Richard has also mentioned, to increase connectivity and coverage is by connecting to intermediaries such as remittance hubs. You have MFS Africa in Africa that provides connectivity to many of the mobile money providers. However, technically, this approach can increase cost. How does M-Pesa strike the balance between scaling services rapidly and remaining competitive when using intermediaries and hubs?
A very, very good point. So I need to give a little bit of context. There is about 10,000 MTOs, which stands for Money Transfer Organization out there, right? No organization, from the panelists, of course, but no organization has the bandwidth to connect to 10,000 MTOs, right? Although we recognize that only a handful of them, the large incumbents and maybe some of the top digital players, do the bulk of the remittances into our markets, which, as Richard says, we are receiving markets. It's very important for us to develop these economies of scale. Okay, and how we do that? We do it through these payment switches. Now, in Europe, in this side of the world, we have different regional schemes. In Africa, I think it's unfortunate that we still don't have regional payment switches where different mobile wallets and banks and MTOs can connect. So what has happened is the private sector has innovated, has come and filled the void. You mentioned MFS, there is Tunes, there is HomeSend that play well into that space. What they do for us, they bring us scale. We cannot connect to 10,000. So by connecting through these players, they give us the scale to do the account onboarding, to do the due diligence, to negotiate the commercials, to do sanction screening. Compliance is a very important role when you do remittances. So for us is, yes, we will entertain direct partnerships, but the way to go, and I think maybe that's an open question to everyone in the panel, is the way to go is going through payment switches. Either they are private, happy to, either they are government-led or non-for-profit. The way to go is going through payment switches. It lowers the cost down. Okay, it provides better scalability for mobile wallets, and important for us to make it affordable. Okay, lower the cost down, because I'll say something. I mean, if I have to connect to all the MTOs and to the Western Union and the MoneyGrams and all the World Remits of the world, I mean, we need a team of resources which we as mobile wallet, we don't have. I mean, we don't have an army of people that work for us. Please know that we are not money transfer organization. We are mobile wallet that do domestic transfer, and remittance is only one part of the business, right? So I think finding the balance is striking a strategic partnership is something that we do, but we want to emphasize a lot the role of partnership. So Richard, in his capacity, and Anne, actually, they are not my competitors at all. They are my partners. Because in remittances, it's multiple jurisdiction, multiple currencies. So I don't view them at all as competitors. I need them, I need their business in order for us to scale cross-border remittances in Africa and beyond. So yeah, to your questions, I think.
Thank you, Florent.
Saad, if you may allow me to add
yes,
something.
sure. Sure, please.
Sorry. In this spirit of partnership, myself and Anne have developed a scheme. It's called Moali. I would not do this panel justice that I am inviting him to come and join us, because we already have a scheme with Anne that needs you to participate in it for us to actually have synergy in terms of reducing cost, in terms of increasing efficiencies, in terms of the remittance space. So Florent, I think after this we can have another meeting for us to
absolutely
move the agenda forward.
as long as the economics work. I mean, we open, but yes, I think it's the way to go. We need to explore these partnerships for sure.
Thank you, Richard.
Great. No, I think partnerships and collaboration is the way to go about reducing the costs and creating more sustainable environment for remittances. Florent, when you were talking, you mentioned a point on different pricing, different currencies. Foreign exchange is a key element of cost and actually drives the price up. We've seen the contrast between East Africa and West Africa, where the transaction costs between West African regions are considerably lower. And compared to East Africa, where you've got foreign exchange charges. As much as I'm sure the audience is also keen to understand how foreign exchange costs are charged on a per transaction basis when they're using M-Pesa to do international remittance transactions.
Very, very good point. And as anyone in the panel and actually in your audience, whenever you do a cross-border remittance payment, actually the key and most important fee, it's not the fee that you normally see, is the FX element, right? Which is the change between the intra-bank LIBOR or Reuters, and there is a markup that normally each MTO or bank or mobile wallet charges. So someone has to bear an FX risk. I mean, we always get so hung up on the idea, and let's lower the cost. But before lowering the cost, you have to understand the economics of doing remittances, right? And FX is a key element of that. Now you have to know something. We are dealing in currencies that are highly unstable. We are not doing dollars and in euros and GB pound. Actually, we're doing currencies that are highly volatile, which means the FX exposure is much higher, and the risk that is being taken is much higher. So there is a reason why sending money into Africa is expensive. It's not that there are some bad guys trying to rip people off. It's the cost of doing business in this corridor is high because of the FX and few other things. But since we're focusing on FX, there is a couple of things we normally do as M-Pesa, and I'm keen to hear what the other panelists will share. Either you take the FX risk in-house, okay? Or you disseminate that risk and there is someone else that does it. Now, the hubs that we mentioned and we discussed, because they are middle players, they are intermediaries, they sometimes take that FX risk for us. So please note, and I think I need to recognize that in some of our, on most of our corridors, actually the settlement of a remittance into M-Pesa happens in local currency. You know what does it mean? It means that someone else is taking that risk, and normally it's not M-Pesa. Okay, might be either the sending entity or the middle player, which is a payment hub. So that allows M-Pesa to kind of maybe give away some of the commission that we are entitled from this transaction to the customers. Now, please note that there are markets, for example, Safaricom, our business in Kenya, which is a little more developed. They take FX risks, right? And this sometimes requires a remittance license. Now, it may be worth asking the panelists if they do have a remittance license. Now, having a mobile wallet license is slightly different from having a remittance license. A remittance license allows you to play in the FX space, okay? So a lot of mobile wallets in the world, they play it a little bit safe. They don't do the FX. They outsource it to a bank or maybe a third party because, you know, they don't feel comfortable. Or you can become a little bit more aggressive and play into the FX space. Now, if you play in the FX space, it's a double-edged sword. If, for example, the currency devaluates, like in Kenya, I mean, we made a profit, but if the currency goes up, then I think you lose. So I think it requires a little bit of treasury management and FX management, which is something that we need to build. But to your point, FX is a key element why mobile wallets in general are able to price differently. And a key point, we are not remittance companies. Our bread and butter is not remittances. I mean, we are developing an ecosystem, so we are able to charge slightly different. Whereas Western Union or maybe a World Remit, their bread and butter is remittances. They have to maximize this channel and make the most out of it. Whereas mobile wallets and us in this space, we have different revenue stream, which allows us to be a little more kind of price conscious, maybe offering a very small markup in order for us to build business and grow the ecosystem. Okay, so I hope I've answered and just conscious of time, but yeah, it's a topic that we can discuss for long. Yeah.
Thank you, Florent. Richard, in your view, do you agree with the practice? Do you think that there are any further challenges that need to be addressed?
It's funny, you know, I began my career in remittances from Florent's company. So when you talked about the fact that we started that before, what we have done to refine it a little bit in MTN is first, we encourage a lot of local pre-funding in local currency. We actually moved the exposure from the MTO to, from the MNOs to the MTOs and the bank partnerships they have. Then settlement is done on a more regular basis, but the payment, actual movement of funds is delayed. So we capture all that to mitigate the risk of always, also to reduce charges. So we've also developed better banking partnerships. As Antonio put it very well, Florent put it, the biggest component is that FX risk and the volatility of our currencies. So what we have done, the banks we bank with, or sometimes we call them our escrow partners, we encourage MTOs to work with those. And actually, it reduces the FX rate and the time it takes for them to pre-fund their accounts locally. So we are more or less doing the same thing, but we keep on refining it as we move along to make the costs go lower and lower in terms of FX.
Sounds good. The role of mobile money in ensuring the last mile has safe access to remittances is commendable. Strong partnerships are accelerating the shift to digital. Over $500 million was digitized by mobile money agents alone. The Remittance Community Task Force highlights how Vodacom M-Pesa went the extra mile to ensure cleanliness at agent locations to enable customers to use agent services safely. Florent, just very briefly, how was the journey like for M-Pesa during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it actually it happened, yeah, this time around last year. I think M-Pesa being a mobile wallet, I think it's well placed to kind of drive the digitalization. And if you remember back then, it was a guidance from the World Health Organization that handling cash, it's risky and can kind of, expedite a little bit the COVID. So I think the guidance was, let's minimize cash. And if you remember Vodafone and Vodacom and Safaricom, and I'm sure the other mobile wallets, I think they undertook some initiatives about waiving or lowering the commission for doing M-Pesa, a transaction in order to incentivize customers to move away from cash. But you have to know, mobile wallets, they require cash because you need to do a deposit in cash, and then you need to withdraw cash. So I think we needed to find a fine balance between promoting digitalization, but in the same time, managing cash in our stores hygienically, and to ensure that customers are safe. They have confidence on using the M-Pesa agent, but in the same time looking after the health of our agents. So we had different initiatives around providing findings for sanitizers and soaps and other protective equipment. But one that I wanted to highlight is the initiative that we did in Mozambique, where we provided 30,000 hand washing kits, or stations, where we provided a 25 liters of a tank with a tap, with a receiving basin, including a stool. So each customers, before coming to the store, they would just wash their hands, get inside, hand the cash, the agent will perform the transaction, leave the store, go again, wash their hands. I think it made a huge difference, because in the early days, people were scared to go and have an interaction with the agent. It made a huge difference from our agents, who are happy to come to work and to ensure that they can go back home and look after their families. But the most important thing is the feedback that we had from the customers. We didn't see a major slowdown on the traffic, which is important. So yes, in the first couple of months, it was a little bit of a transition, but it was well received. And I think this is something to highlight, that in markets with poor sanitation infrastructure, like Mozambique and other markets in sub-Saharan Africa, these private initiatives, I think, it played a crucial role in accelerating access to preventive techniques to combat COVID. So we're really proud of that. Okay.
Great, sounds good. And Catherine, anything do you want to add in terms of the role that Orange has played during this pandemic in terms of managing safe services for agents and customers?
Yeah, sure. So depending on the countries, but generally we stick to what the regulation or the government has imposed, has settled, either curfew or containment, or I don't know, etc., etc. For example, in Madagascar, I can recall that at the beginning of the pandemic, mobile money services was not identified as a priority option, and then it was changed. So our point of sale was authorized to open until noon. So in order to to make sure that our main interface with customers, even if these are indirect channels, so they are not directly employed by Orange, we like Vodacom has a set of measures to make their activities safer, either through the communication on COVID, distance barriers, or the access to some water to wash the hand after doing some operations, and so on and so forth.
Great. In the interest of time, Richard, I know MTN has 5 operating companies that are GSMA mobile money certified, and assurance that the provider has implemented the best-in-class practices to offer safe and reliable mobile money services. So how has the certification benefited MTN in offering mobile money services during these very challenging times? Richard, you're on mute.
Sorry. For us to get that certification, we had to go through 8 key principles that we held. So we had to look at areas of customer satisfaction, so our whole customer journeys, how we treat our agents, AML and compliance, etc. So now, in terms of getting the certification, it has helped us deal easier with regulators, because when we show that we're the best in class in terms of we do screening, we do ML, how we treat our agents, how our customers are, transparency with regards to pricing, and how we have an effective and robust security channel for money, reliable IT services, blah, blah, blah. It has given our customers more satisfaction in terms of what they can do. And when we got it in the 5 countries, in Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Rwanda, Uganda, we have seen a market more customer believability, because a lot of our services for mobile money is for customers to believe that their money is safe, secure, and that they can use it. So the only benefit we saw is more stickiness to our services, which could be a cause of many other factors. But yes, that is how we have seen it help our customers. We're more present in their lives in terms of the feedback they give as well. And yeah, and the services we offer, we have more uptime. So those are the things that we have seen coming as benefits towards having this certification.
Great. That sounds good. Mobile money remittances offer a high degree of transparency for regulators and law enforcement agencies. Yet, licensing remains a key barrier to launching new mobile money remittance services. As of December 2020, according to the GSMA, only about a third of mobile money providers were permitted to offer mobile money remittance services. In this regard, the GSMA has also published a paper encouraging regulators and policymakers to adopt level playing field and increase transparency of the licensing criteria. Before we open the floor for Q&A, I'd like to ask my panelists very briefly, what else is needed in your view to ensure a streamlined licensing process so that mobile money providers can continue to launch and offer affordable, scalable remittance services in your markets? Perhaps we can start with Florent.
Okay, well, okay, I'll be really quick. I mean, we can talk long about regulatory approvals. You have to understand remittance is a risky business, right? It's the most risky business we do as mobile wallet. So it has to be properly licensed, properly regulated. Now, we need to see better engagement from the regulator to open up more corridors. Now, if you are close to the space, it's easier to do receiving business right now than doing sending. So I think one of the key asks for us is how can we accelerate mobile wallets to do more send business? Okay, send remittances initiated from our countries into other countries. I think that's a key one. Second one is important is opening more corridors. Right now, I mean, it takes 6 to 9 months in certain corridors to open up remittances. I think that's not the way to go, especially post-COVID. We have shown that we can do remittances and we can do it safely. We can do it scale, we can do it cheaply. So I think, you know, central banks maybe are running out of excuses here, and we need to provide a risk-based approach independently of the channel, so we can grant approvals to mobile wallets to not just do receiving, but to do more send and to open up more corridors. It's very common today, and this is not a dig to the central bank, but let's take a particular MTO, and I'm not naming, but if you go, for example, to a central bank, we need to get an approval for M-Pesa. We need to get an approval for MTN. We need to get an approval for Orange. It doesn't make sense, right? I mean, once you have validated a partner as a valid channel, it doesn't make any sense once you are trying to approve each corridor. So I think we need to streamline a little bit the process. Second, and what most important is, we need to develop these regional payment switches, okay? I mean, the likes that we are seeing in other parts of the world, either they are government-led, or they are private-owned led. We are happy to entertain and discuss any, but this is the way to go. We cannot scale hundreds of corridors, it would take us 5-10 years. So before we run out of time, we need to get the regulators more comfortable with the model that we are trying to do, and then trying to put a level playing field, as you said, based on the risk that each of the players represent systematically, to ensure that we can open up more corridors. I'm conscious, we don't have much time, but yeah, I'll hand it over to the other panelists. And Saad, I'm seeing lots of good questions from the audience, so hopefully,
Yes.
we have an opportunity to respond to all of them. Yeah.
Yes, very quickly, Anne-Catherine, in terms of licensing, do you have a quick point?
Yeah, I will go in the sense of Florent. We need smoother licensing processes, and I will take it differently. You know, in some regions, you will have the regulators that will actually give a mobile money provider one authorization for doing remittances, and then for opening new corridors, they would just request the mobile money provider to notify the central bank. And then you have some other region where each time you want to open a corridor, you have to get an authorization. And this is very heavy administrative processes that do not go in the sense of driving costs down for the customers. I know there may be last point I will raise is that we need improved and reliable data on formal remittances per corridors. Today, the data that we have, some are coming from the World Bank. They are kind of estimation of the size of corridors. Depending on the corridors, we can experience much more traffic much more flows than the actual market can be. So data is going to provide all the stakeholders, including regulators, with more readability on remittances in sending and receiving countries, and also maybe help them to predict the flows and kind of depending on how the foreign exchange reserve policy is, to limit outgoing or ingoing flows per user. That will be my 2%.
Thank you, Anne-Catherine. I think the data is very important, but at the same time, we would need to see how the data privacy would work on this. Richard, very quickly, anything on licensing that MTN wants to add in?
I can add, I'll maybe just reiterate Catherine's point, that we need regulators when we ask for approvals. If we do it once, we can just be informing them. We find that very efficient when you're opening new corridors. Then maybe I can add something to do from the KYC side for our customers. And we need to take a risk-based approach, as Florent has said it. That will help us also increase limits for our customers in terms of how much money they can send and receive. And also, because we're moving towards digital KYC, which should be acceptable amongst the different central banks, that will help as well. So those are aspects I would hope if the regulators are in this session to see that those are aspects we want. And also the level of KYC we need. So that improves our customer journeys. Like now we have to input source, purpose, location, a lot of fields that are necessary for somebody who is doing a USSD session from a practical perspective. So these are things I hope regulators can now see that would need help in terms of getting waivers. If we're doing a risk-based approach from our customers' perspective, help us in terms of, as you develop the products, to be part and parcel of their journey.
Thank you, Richard. In the interest of time, we'll move on to the Q&A. We've received some interesting questions from the floor. And it's good that, Richard, you spoke about KYC. One of the questions has already been answered. That was around addressing KYC. So you guys are implementing a proper risk-based approach, which is good. The other question is, do you see a role for encrypted digital currencies, either stable coins or central bank digital currencies, playing a role in bringing down foreign exchange costs? This is an open question. Any one of you can answer.
I can provide some comments here. This is a good one. Now, what we normally see is we see innovation being ahead of regulation, right? And crypto, it's not different. Now, what we have seen though, whereas in this side of the world, in the developed world, cryptocurrency is seen mainly as an investment or speculation tool. In Africa, cryptocurrency is seen as a way of facilitating transactions. Go and ask the Nigerians and the Zimbabweans, why do these customers use cryptocurrency? Is it because it's fancy? No, it's because when you have highly volatile currencies, as we discussed, I mean, you tend to find ways to kind of minimize the risk. So I see a huge opportunity on crypto, distributed ledger technology, and I'm not getting stuck into particular players, Bitcoin or etc. It addresses some of the key points of sending money, which is it's a fragmented relationship. It's not real time, which is with crypto, it can facilitate that. It helps with FX settlement. It can happen real time. So it removes the cost of all the admin work that is required to do. And then last but not least, it's around KYC. So everything that we have been discussing can be addressed with crypto, but there is always a but. It's an area which is still not regulated. Right, and whereas we as M-Pesa, we're keeping an eye in the space, and we would love to maybe pilot, and we see different companies these days, and PayPal and MasterCard and Visa and Tesla kind of jumping on board. I mean, it's a space that we are looking and we're willing to play, but again, we need to see the regulation to follow suit and to ensure that this is a regulated space, because in the end of the day, we are managing customer money. So we want to ensure that we're mitigating some of the risk. But to the question, huge opportunity. It addresses some of the key points on remittances, and this is a space to be watched. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. One more question that we'll take very quickly is, do you see that there is a need for greater financial literacy in the remittance space? Perhaps Richard and Catherine, you want to respond to it?
Yeah, I would say yes, definitely. When we talk about digitization, there's still a significant digital divide in Africa. So the more we will help the customers to better understand the opportunity that digitization can offer to them, the better it is. Maybe something else I can add, this actually goes beyond the international remittances topic. And some point also is that what we see in our market is that most of the time the recipient is going to be the prescriber to the sender of the means to send remittances. So yeah, for us, there's a business opportunity to make sure that recipients are aware of digital ways to send money home.
Thank you, Anne. We have received quite a few other interesting questions, but in the interest of time, I would say that we would try and respond to those questions in writing. We'll share the responses with eGFRID, which I assume then, the responses would then be published later on. Just in a summary, with greater emphasis on partnerships, cost reduction and coverage, mobile money seems to be best placed to create a robust digital ecosystem for remittances, obviously. And of course, there is a need for more enabling regulatory framework, especially around licensing. This brings us to the end of the session. I'd like to thank all panelists for their useful insights, the audience for listening and asking interesting questions, and last but not the least, iFight team for organizing this event. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session on the role of public sector in enhancing financial services will start in approximately 9 minutes. If you want to grab a coffee, feel free to do so, but please do join us for the next session. I'll hand over to Pedro now.
Thank you, Saad. Once more, you guys are doing a perfect job with actually my introduction, so I have nothing to say except congratulating this panel, and to let you know that a lot of the points that you've raised need to be addressed. As you know, we're setting up the agenda for the Global Forum on June 16 on the occasion of the International Day of Family Remittances. I'm happy to say that it will open with the private sector and digitalization. So you basically just set key aspects for the agenda that we will try to build up with your audience as we go for looking forward for that day. So you have 8 minutes. We get back here for the next sessions, and have a quick coffee, and please come back. Thank you all again for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.